15 Worst Italian Sleeper Cars of the 1990s. Welcome back, gearheads. Today we are heading to Italy for 15 worst Italian sleeper cars of the 1990s. These cars looked quick and classy, but turned out to be heartbreakers in disguise. They had Ferrari parts, turbo badges, and big promises, yet many couldn't outrun a tired scooter. From Maseratis that struggled, to move to Alfas that fell apart faster than they accelerated. This list shows that not every Italian built for speed could deliver it. Buckle up, because these sleepers might just put you to sleep. 15. Lancia Delta HF Integrale 16V. The Lancia Delta HF Integrale 16V belongs on this list because, despite its racing pedigree and rally success, it was a nightmare for everyday driving. While its legacy as a rally champion is well known, it failed to translate that performance to the streets. The car's styling was aggressive enough to give off a sporty vibe, but its suspension and handling were more suited to a rough rally stage than a smooth city road. The ride was stiff and unforgiving, and the car's weight distribution was a constant problem, especially when pushing it on tight corners or uneven surfaces. The interior was basic at best, with cheap materials that failed to match its motorsport credentials. This mismatch between its rally-ready design and daily usability made it a poor sleeper, as it didn't live up to its promise of being a subtle, everyday performance car. Under the hood, the Delta HF Integrale 16V packed a turbocharged 2.3-liter, four-cylinder engine that produced about 200 horsepower and 220 pound-feet of torque. While these numbers seemed impressive for a compact hatchback, the engine suffered from significant turbo lag, which made acceleration less linear than expected. The 0 to 60 miles per hour time was around 6.5 seconds, which was quick in the 1990s. But the car's unpredictable handling and turbo lag often made it feel slower than it was. The all-wheel drive system gave it decent grip, but it wasn't enough to mask the inconsistent driving experience. The car's performance on paper sounded promising, but the reality was a complex mix of frustration and fleeting thrills, making it a tough car to love in the long run. 14. Fiat Punto GT. The Fiat Punto GT deserves its own chapter in the book of Italian optimism. Here was a super mini that promised to outrun bigger, heavier cars with nothing but boost and bravado. Fiat took the standard Punto, bolted on a turbo, and sent it out to hunt Golfs and Astras. The trouble started when people actually drove it. The boost hit like a slap from a Roman ante, and the steering reacted like it was powered by caffeine and panic. It was fast in a straight line, but cornered like it was trying to escape its own shadow. The interior looked like it was borrowed from a child's toy set, and the suspension had all the refinement of a pogo stick. Reliability was a generous word. Every drive felt like a dare. The turbo would whistle proudly one day and surrender the next. Owners learned to keep a spare ECU in the glove box and a prayer on their lips. The Punto GT was both heroic and hopeless. A pocket rocket that proved not all speed is built on sense. It looked harmless enough to fool your grandma, but it had the temperament of a caffeinate with a death wish. 13. Alfa Romeo 145 QV. The Alfa Romeo 145 QV is one of those cars that makes you wonder what the engineers in Milan were drinking the day they signed off. On paper, it had everything a 90s hot hatch needed: a twin-spark 16-valve engine, a snappy 5-speed manual, and the handling pedigree of a proper Alfa. The problem was that none of it worked together for more than a weekend. The engine loved to rev, but sounded like it was arguing with itself past 6,000 revolutions per minute. The steering was sharp, but somehow managed to feel numb right when you needed confidence. Alfa wrapped it in a shape that looked like it had been drawn with a ruler and then softened with an eraser. It wanted to look futuristic, yet ended up looking like a refrigerator with fog lights. Inside, you got hard plastics that aged faster than milk in the sun and switchgear that had all the precision of a lottery ticket. It could have been a cult classic if it didn't spend half its life waiting for tow trucks. The 145 QV is the kind of sleeper that hides its speed mostly because asleep in a garage waiting for parts. 12. Fiat Tipo Sedicivalvole. The Fiat Tipo Sedicivalvole wanted to be Italy's answer to the Golf GTI. It had a 2.2-liter 16-valve engine, sharp handling, and just enough attitude to make interesting. What it lacked was consistency. The engine was lively, but the build quality felt like a classroom project. Every panel buzzed, every plastic creaked, and the dashboard looked like it had been molded from recycled lunch trays. Fiat gave it speed but forgot to give it soul. The handling was respectable when new, but the suspension aged faster than a carton of milk in July. Torque steer came free with every gear change, and the gearbox sometimes decided that third gear was optional. The car had moments of brilliance on twisty roads, yet none of them lasted long enough to forget the rattle behind your left ear. As a sleeper, the Tipo had the right idea, but the wrong execution. It hit its speed well, because no one believed it could move that fast without falling apart. A car with plenty of valve, very little polish, and just enough charm to make you forgive it until it breaks again. 11. Fiat Coupe 2 Turbo 20V. The Fiat Coupe 2 Turbo 20V is a car that wants to be a hero, but often ends up being a cautionary tale. It looks like a sleek, elegant Italian coupe, designed to turn heads at every corner, and on paper it has the credentials to back it up. A 2.2-liter 20-valve turbocharged engine pumps out nearly 190 horsepower, and Pininfarina's styling gives it a presence that suggests confidence and poise. To anyone who does not know better, it seems like a sleeper that could quietly outperform almost anything else on the street. The reality is that this car carries its own little war zone under the bonnet. The turbo engine is famously sensitive, prone to overheating, if not pampered and demanding maintenance, that can empty a wallet faster than a Saturday night in Milan. The suspension is both playful and unpredictable. In one moment it dances around corners like it owns the road, and the next it feels twitchy and nervous, leaving the driver questioning every input inside. Fiat made choices that were more practical than premium, with plastics that rattle and electronics that stage their own rebellions. As a sleeper, it does its job, hiding its pace behind a polished and innocent exterior. A casual observer would never guess that this small coupe can embarrass heavier sedans and hatchbacks, but its potential is as unreliable as it is exciting. Owners often find themselves in a love-hate relationship, exhilarated by the turbo burst one day and frustrated by an electrical or mechanical hiccup the next. The Fiat Coupe 2 Turbo 20V is a masterclass in Italian contradiction. It promises stealthy power and delivers thrills and bursts, yet its quirks, fragility, and constant need for attention make it a classic one of the worst sleepers of the 1990s. It is the kind of car that looks ready to impress your neighbors and ends up impressing only your mechanic, but at least it does so with style. 10. Lancia Kappa 2 Turbo 16V. The Lancia Kappa 2 Turbo 16V was supposed to be the gentleman's express that brought Lancia back into the conversation. A turbocharged twin-cam 4 making over 200 horsepower and a cabin trimmed in the kind of soft materials that made you want to live in it. Somehow the Kappa never found its rhythm. The design looked like it was penned by a committee that had never met. Every line tried to go in a different direction, and the result was a car that looked apologetic even when parked. On the road, it was competent but never thrilling. The turbo surge arrived late, the torque steer arrived early, and the steering wheel shook like it was trying to warn you of something. The car felt heavy in all the wrong places. Reliability was the usual Italian lottery, with electronics that decided to vacation whenever it rained. It was comfortable, fast enough, and entirely forgettable. The Kappa was a sleeper that took its nap too seriously, blending in so completely that even its own engineers probably lost track of it. A near miss from a brand that once built legends and somehow ended up building lullabies. 9. Fiat Marea Weekend Turbo. The Fiat Marea Weekend Turbo sounded like a dream for the practical petrol head. A wagon with the 2.2-liter 5-cylinder turbo engine from the Fiat Coupe, enough space for luggage, and a soundtrack that could rival an old Audi Quattro. On paper, it had everything: power, character, and total anonymity. In reality, it was one of the strangest sleepers Italy ever built. The engine made it fast, but the chassis never got the memo. Torque steer tried to rip the wheel from your hands, and the suspension felt confused about whether it was carrying groceries or chasing lap times. It looked ordinary enough to disappear in traffic, which was the point, but it also disappeared from memory for the same reason. Build quality was optimistic at best. Plastics rattled, the turbo aged like cheese, and reliability was a constant negotiation. But it always felt like the speed came at the expense of something essential, usually your patience. The Marea Weekend Turbo is a perfect summary of 90s Fiat: brilliant idea, flawed execution, endless charisma. A car that could outrun your expectations, provided it started that morning. 8. Alfa Romeo 331.716B Quadri Folio Verde. The Alfa Romeo 33 1.716V Quadrifoglio Verde carried one of the most romantic badges in motoring. The flat-4 boxer engine was a masterpiece of sound and spirit, revving with the enthusiasm of a marching band on espresso. It made around 130 horsepower, which in a car this light should have been thrilling. Instead, it felt like trying to dance in shoes a size too big. The Romeo 33 had raw talent but lacked discipline. The chassis was agile but twitchy, the brakes worked when they felt like it, and the gearbox felt like stirring concrete. The cabin was a festival of hard plastics and strange ergonomics, the kind of place where switches were placed seemingly by instinct. The engine note was heavenly, though, a mix of mechanical chatter and Italian optimism that made you forgive everything for a moment. The problem was that the moment never lasted long. Rust appeared before the warranty expired. Oil leaks developed like family traditions. The 33QV looked modest enough to be a true sleeper, but its worst trait was inconsistency. It could charm you on one drive and curse you the next. A car with the soul of a violin but the wiring of a toaster. 7. Fiat Uno Turbo, i.e. 1.4 Turbo. The Fiat Uno Turbo, i.e. is a tiny hatchback that, on paper, seems almost comically innocent for what lurks under the bonnet. Early 1990s engineering gave it a 1.3 or 1.4-liter turbocharged engine with fuel injection, allowing it to produce enough power to leave heavier cars in its wake while maintaining remarkable urban agility. It is lightweight, responsive, and deceptively quick, making it one of the most underestimated small cars of the decade. However, the Uno Turbo IE is a car where ambition outran reliability. The engine and turbo plumbing require meticulous attention, as neglect can quickly lead to overheating, turbo failure, or oil starvation. The suspension is light and fun, but struggles to cope with repeated stress, leading to premature bushings and worn shocks. The interior is minimalistic, with cheap plastics and switches that rattle or fail, reminding you constantly that this is a car born for speed but not longevity. As a sleeper, it succeeds brilliantly because it looks like a grocery getter while having genuine pace. Yet its flaws make it a frustrating companion. It is the ultimate paradox, a car that can thrill, shock, and disappoint in equal measure. 6. Fiat Barchetta. The Fiat Barchetta deserves a spot on this list for its mix of charm and disappointment. It was a car that tried to be an affordable Italian roadster, offering an accessible way to enjoy a sporty driving experience. While the Barchetta's exterior had the sleek lines of a proper sports car, its suspension and chassis were far from refined. The car's lightweight build was great for agility, but the suspension felt too firm for everyday comfort, especially on rougher roads. The handling could be fun, but it was twitchy, and the chassis was a bit nervous when pushed too hard. Inside, the Barchetta lacked the premium feel that many buyers expected from an Italian roadster. The plastics felt cheap, and the minimalistic interior did little to elevate the driving experience, making it clear that this was a budget roadster rather than a serious sports car. Powered by a 1.8-liter four-cylinder engine, the Fiat Barchetta produced around 130 horsepower and 118 pound-feet of torque, and the car could manage a 0 to 60 miles per hour time of approximately 8.5 seconds. While not particularly fast, it was quick enough to be entertaining on winding roads. However, the car's true potential was limited by its inconsistent build quality and lack of refinement. The Barchetta was fun when it worked, but its reliability issues and lack of polish meant it often left drivers frustrated rather than exhilarated. Its charm quickly wore off when the mechanical quirks and subpar handling started to take their toll, making it a sleeper that didn't quite live up to expectations. 5. Maserati Biturbo. The Maserati Biturbo of the late variants is a story of brilliance with a hint of chaos. By the 1990s, Maserati had refined the platform significantly, but the car still carried the DNA of its troubled youth. A twin-turbo V6 delivered a surprisingly strong punch for such an understated coupe, and the suspension offered a balance of sport and comfort that could still impress unsuspecting drivers. Its looks were conservative compared to the fiery style of Italian exotics, which made it a proper sleeper in the truest sense. The catch, as always with Maserati, was in the details. Electrical quirks, cooling issues, and aging plastics meant ownership required patience and a good wallet. The engine, however, never lied. When it woke up, it barked, pulled, and reminded you that Maserati had the capability to build fire-breathing machines. It was a car that could hide in plain sight, strike unexpectedly, and leave its more obvious rivals questioning reality. A late Biturbo was not flawless, but it was Italian audacity wrapped in subtlety, making it the perfect undercover performance car. 4. Fiat Tempra Turbo 16V. The Fiat Tempra Turbo 16V is the kind of car that looks like a stationary office cubicle on wheels, but hides a surprising appetite for speed. Underneath its plain, four-door exterior lurked a 2.4-liter turbocharged engine with 16 valves and enough grunt to make anyone behind the wheel do a double-take. It wasn't going to embarrass a Ferrari, but it had enough punch to remind drivers of sportier intentions. The chassis was stable, the steering responsive, and the brakes competent, which made it feel more alive than its conservative body suggested. The problem was that the Tempra struggled with weight distribution and body roll, and the turbo lag made acceleration a guessing game. The interior was all hard plastics with a few ergonomic quirks, and the electronics had a tendency to rebel at the most inconvenient times. Yet there was something undeniably charming about it. It could sneak past traffic unnoticed, then suddenly remind you it wasn't just a commuter appliance. The Tempra Turbo 16V was Italy's modest little mischief, a sleeper that looked like a spreadsheet but had hidden teeth. 3. Alfa Romeo 155 Q4. The Alfa Romeo 155 Q4 was essentially a street-legal rally car disguised as a conservative sedan. It inherited the all-wheel drive and turbocharged systems from Alfa's racing programs, which meant it could accelerate, grip, and corner far beyond what its exterior suggested. To the casual observer, it looked like a mundane 90s four-door, which made its performance all the more shocking when unleashed. The driving experience is tight and responsive, with a chassis tuned to feel agile and precise. The turbocharged engine delivers power in a way that feels both playful and dangerous, rewarding skilled hands and punishing hesitation. Inside, it remains modest, with straightforward controls and limited luxury, emphasizing function over flair. The 155 Q4 is a true sleeper. It can outpace more obvious sports sedans while remaining nearly invisible in traffic. A reminder that Italian engineering sometimes thrives in disguise. 2. Alfa Romeo 164 Q4. The Alfa Romeo 164 Q4 is the kind of car that thrives on underestimation. Its sleek, understated shape masks a 3.3-liter V6 and an advanced all-wheel drive system that gives it a pace and poise beyond what anyone would guess at first glance. It drives like a luxury sedan on the surface, but hides the agility and responsiveness of a sports car. On winding roads, it grips in corners with surprising confidence, and the engine delivers smooth, linear power that keeps you in command without ever feeling harsh or twitchy. The interior is spacious and driver-focused, offering comfort for long journeys while maintaining a sense of purpose. Switches and plastics are functional rather than luxurious, yet the overall experience is polished enough to feel refined. What makes the 164 Q4 a sleeper is that it blends this combination of comfort, technology, and performance into a package that looks entirely unremarkable. It will quietly embarrass more obvious sports sedans without anyone noticing until it is too late, proving that understated engineering can be far more dangerous than overt aggression. 1. Lancia Thema 8.32. The Lancia Thema 8.32 is the ultimate example of subtle Italian audacity. On the outside, it looks like a conservative executive sedan, the kind of car you could park in a bank lot and no one would give it a second glance. But under the hood sits a 3.3-liter Ferrari V8 that delivers a soundtrack and performance few would expect from such a polite shape. It accelerates with authority and revs with a raucous charm that betrays its understated exterior. The steering is precise, the suspension strikes a balance between comfort and composure, and it corners with more confidence than most cars twice its price. The interior is surprisingly refined, with soft leather and wood trim that makes the cabin feel grown up without being flashy. Still, typical Italian quirks remain: temperamental electronics and a need for careful maintenance. The Thema 8.32 rewards those who appreciate subtlety and performance, a car that surprises the unprepared and delights enthusiasts with its clever combination of everyday usability and hidden aggression. It's a true sleeper that proves raw power does not need to wear a loud badge. And that wraps up the 15 worst Italian sleeper cars of the 1990s. Some looked harmless, some looked practical, and all of them somehow managed to disappoint in style. If you enjoyed seeing these underwhelming Italians try and fail, hit subscribe and join the club of people who love judging things that should have stayed in the garage.